Some of the worst epidemics and pandemics in history have doomed whole civilizations and brought once powerful nations to their knees, killing millions. While these terrible disease outbreaks still threaten humanity, history shows that past pandemics have reshaped societies in profound ways. Hundreds of millions of people have died, empires have fallen, governments have cracked, generations have been annihilated. Hello and welcome. Today I will be your host to take you through some of the worst and deadliest pandemics in our history. Before I continue, please subscribe to our channel by hitting the bell icon so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Here are 10 of the worst epidemics and pandemics in history, which have remade the world. Number 10. Swine flu pandemic. Before COVID-19, this was the world's most recent pandemic, infecting as much as 21% of the world's population. Swine flu was a hodgepodge of several different flu strains that had never been collectively seen together. The 2009 swine flu pandemic was caused by a new strain of H1N1 that originated in Mexico in the spring of 2009, before spreading to the rest of the world. In 1 year, the virus infected as many as 1.4 billion people across the globe, and killed between 151,700 and 575,400 people, according to the CDC. The 2009 flu pandemic primarily affected children and young adults, and 80% of the deaths were in people younger than 65, the CDC reported. That was unusual, considering that most strains of flu viruses, including those that cause seasonal flu, cause the highest percentage of deaths in people ages 65 and older. Number 9. Asian flu. The Asian flu pandemic was another global showing for influenza. With its roots in China, the disease claimed more than 1 million lives. The virus that caused the pandemic was a blend of avian flu viruses. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention notes that the disease spread rapidly and was reported in Singapore in February 1957, Hong Kong in April 1957, and the coastal cities of the United States in the summer of 1957. The total death toll was more than 1.1 million worldwide, with 116,000 deaths occurring in the United States. One man saw it coming. Maurice Hilleman, the doctor later regarded as the godfather of vaccines, was working at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research in 1957 when he read a New York Times article about a nasty flu outbreak in Hong Kong that mentioned glassy-eyed children at a clinic. Something about their eyes tipped him off, according to Smithsonian Magazine. Number 8. West African Ebola epidemic. Ebola ravaged West Africa between 2014 and 2016, with 28,600 reported cases and 11,325 deaths. The first case to be reported was in Guinea in December 2013. Then the disease quickly spread to Liberia and Sierra Leone. The bulk of the cases and deaths occurred in those three countries. A smaller number of cases occurred in Nigeria, Mali, Senegal, the United States, and Europe, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported. There is no cure for Ebola, although efforts at finding a vaccine are ongoing. The first known cases of Ebola occurred in Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo in 1976, and the virus may have originated in bat. Number 7. Antonine Plague. When soldiers returned to the Roman Empire from campaigning, they brought back more than the spoils of victory. The Antonine Plague, which may have been smallpox, laid waste to the army and may have killed over 5 million people in the Roman Empire, wrote April Pudsey, a senior lecturer in Roman history at Manchester Metropolitan University, in a paper published in the book Disability in Antiquity, Routledge, 2017. Many historians believe that the epidemic was first brought into the Roman Empire by soldiers returning home after a war against Parthia. The epidemic contributed to the end of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, a period from 27 BC to AD 180, when Rome was at the height of its power. After AD 180, instability grew throughout the Roman Empire, as it experienced more civil wars and invasions by barbarian groups. Christianity became increasingly popular in the time after the plague occurred. Number 6. Plague of Justinian. Thought to be the world's first episode of bubonic plague, its namesake was the Byzantine emperor who was in power when it hit, likely arriving in the form of infected fleas hitching rides across the world on the backs of rodents. Some estimates suggest that up to 10% of the world's population died, killing about 50 million people. Procopius, a noted historian back then, indicate that many thought the end of civilization was upon them. A pestilence, Procopius wrote of the plague, by which the whole human race was near to being annihilated. Researchers are still digging up evidence connected to the plague all these years later. Number 5. COVID-19. The coronavirus was responsible for the COVID-19 pandemic. It is an infectious disease that has affected millions of people's lives. The pandemic has impacted people all across the world in diverse ways. It was first discovered in Wuhan, China in 2019. However, the World Health Organization, WHO, proclaimed it a pandemic in March 2020, claiming that it has spread throughout the globe like wildfire. The pandemic has claimed the lives of millions of people. The virus had negative consequences for those who were infected, including the development of a variety of chronic disorders. The main symptoms of this disease were loss of smell and taste, fatigue, pale skin, sneezing, coughing, oxygen deficiency, etc. Because COVID-19 was an infectious disease, all those who were infected were instructed to segregate themselves from those who were not. The folks who were affected were separated from their families and locked in a room. The government has prioritized people's safety. The frontline personnel were like superheroes, working tirelessly to ensure the public's safety. For the sake of their patients' and close relatives' safety, many doctors had to stay away from their families and babies. Number 4. AIDS pandemic and epidemic. Have you ever wondered how many lives have AIDS claimed? AIDS has claimed an estimated 35 million lives since it was first identified. HIV, which is the virus that causes AIDS, likely developed from a chimpanzee virus that transferred to humans in West Africa in the 1920s. The virus made its way around the world, and AIDS was a pandemic by the late 20th century. Now, about 64% of the estimated 40 million living with human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, live in sub-Saharan Africa. For decades, the disease had no known cure, but medication developed in the 1990s now allows people with the disease to experience a normal lifespan with regular treatment. Even more encouraging, 2 people have been cured of HIV as of early 2020. Number 3. Spanish flu. The COVID-19 pandemic has inspired lots of comparisons to the 1918 flu, sometimes called the Spanish flu. Despite the name Spanish flu, the disease likely did not start in Spain. Spain was a neutral nation during the war and did not enforce strict censorship of its press, which could therefore freely publish early accounts of the illness. As a result, people falsely believed the illness was specific to Spain, and the name Spanish flu stuck. The flu came in 2 waves, starting in 1918 and ending in 1920. The number of infected is staggering, as many as 500 million, with estimates of 50 million deaths worldwide. According to the CDC, isolation and quarantines were used to slow down transmission. Even President Woodrow Wilson was stricken, nearly derailing talks at the Paris Peace Conference, where the flu left him bedridden for days. Number 2. New World smallpox. Explorers arrived to the New World bearing more than just turnips and grapes. They also brought smallpox, measles, and other viruses for which New World inhabitants had no immunity. Although we may never know the exact magnitudes of the depopulation, it is estimated that upwards of 80–95% of the Native American population was decimated within the first 100–150 years following 1492, according to a 2010 paper in the Journal of Economic Perspectives. The death toll was between 25–55 million people. When people from Britain, France, Portugal, and the Netherlands began exploring, conquering, and settling the Western Hemisphere, they were helped by the fact that disease had vastly reduced the size of any indigenous groups that opposed them. Number 1. The Black Death. Number 1 on the list is not for the faint-hearted. History Today, a monthly magazine of historical writing published in London, calls this pandemic the greatest catastrophe ever. The number of deaths, 200 million, is just astounding. Put it this way, that would be like wiping out roughly 65% of the current US population. Like the plague of Justinian, the Black Death was caused by the bubonic plague. The Black Death traveled from Asia to Europe, leaving devastation in its wake. Some estimates suggest that it wiped out over half of Europe's population. It was caused by a strain of the bacterium Yersinia pestis that is likely extinct today and was spread by fleas on infected rodents. The bodies of victims were buried in mass graves. The plague changed the course of Europe's history. With so many dead, labor became harder to find, bringing about better pay for workers and the end of Europe's system of serfdom. Studies suggest that surviving workers had better access to meat and higher quality bread. The lack of cheap labor may also have contributed to technological innovation. So these were the most deadly pandemics in the history. If you guys know about any other such outbreaks, let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Until then, see you next time in another video.